May I have your attention? May I have your attention, please? That's what Jesus was saying this morning when he said, listen and understand. Jesus has something important to say, and he wants to have everyone in the crowd turn around and stop their sidebar conversations and listen, really listen, listen and understand. May I have your attention, please? Well, now that we're listening, this is the important thing he has to say. It's not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but it's what comes out of the mouth that defiles a person. Now, these words created a bit of a stir and a bit more confusion to Jesus's original audience. You see, at that time, there were purity codes that specifically said that certain things that one put into one's mouth, that is, things that one ate, would indeed defile the person. For instance, pork. In Leviticus 11, it says, the pig, it is unclean for you. Of their flesh you shall not eat, and their carcass you shall not touch. They are unclean to you. So the Pharisees listening to Jesus, well, they took offense at what Jesus was saying because they knew the law. And they knew clearly that certain foods, that certain things that people put into their mouths would indeed defile the person. But what we're hearing this morning is following a conversation Jesus had with the Pharisees about how they cherry-picked which laws and codes they wanted to follow and uphold, and which ones they chose to break for personal gain. And he just called them hypocrites. So but having called them hypocrites, he is now calling out what he sees as a far greater harm. And that is what comes out of our mouths. May I have your attention, please? He called the crowd to him. That's what the scripture said. He called the crowd to him so that he could make clear to everyone there, clergy and laity alike, that the focus of the most critical importance at this moment is what is coming out of their mouths. As he explained to his disciples, what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, and this is what defiles. And then he gave a laundry list of harms that spring from the heart and sound out of the mouths of people. And we can agree with him, right? I mean, if there's evil intention or murder or adultery or fornication or theft or false witness or slander in a person's heart, these things do eventually proceed from the heart and out of the mouth. Now, after this lesson, it appears that we are immediately taken on the road for an example of how this plays out in real life. As Rachel read to us this morning, they were walking through Gentile territory where Jesus and the disciples are confronted with a shouting non-Jewish woman who is begging for Jesus to heal her daughter. The woman's asking for help. Jesus remains silent, and I'm wondering if he's taking some time to consider his response. And I'm also wondering if he's waiting to see what the disciples will say. Well, they show their hearts. They show their hearts in their harsh words. Make her go away. Implicit in that statement of words, is these words, she's not one of us. She's a Gentile. Now, I have to tell you, in all the stories that I ever read, when people were coming towards Jesus and needing to be healed, the disciples were saying, come and come heal my person over here, and there's a person over there, and there are people who need you. And suddenly they're saying, make her go away, because they've decided she is not deserving. It's pretty usual for biblical scholars to suggest that Jesus is having a learning moment of his own, that until this moment, he also thought he had only been sent to the Jews. And while I don't doubt that, I also see him teaching the lesson he spoke earlier with a real life example. You see, we have to fill in this scene. Will you do that with me? So we have to see them walking down the road, and then we have to see the woman herself. She's a real, live human being. The disciples simply see an unworthy person, an outsider. But Jesus always sees the person. He always sees their heart. So Jesus stops walking, and the disciples are relieved because he's finally going to tell her to go away. But instead of doing that, he startles them, because instead of sending her away, he engages her in conversation. I can almost see the disciples' bewildered expression when he decides to stop and actually talk to her. He says, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Now, she has a choice to make. She could simply walk away and go, fine, okay. She could yell obscenities at him first and then walk away. Or she could take this opening to have a conversation. She chooses option 3. See, swiftly she comes in front of him and kneels before him, which is a humble position, and accepts his invitation to converse, and also, by the way, blocks his way forward. I don't know if you noticed that, but that's what she's doing as well. See, now they can see each other. They can see each other's eyes. And she looks into his and she says, Lord, help me. His words in response are the ones that I'm sure the disciples would have hoped to hear. The words that they would have wanted to say. He says, it's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. But I wonder what Jesus's eyes were saying to the woman. And I wonder what the woman's eyes were saying to Jesus. And I wonder what they saw in each other's hearts. I believe she saw Jesus's heart and his love and his compassion. And from her own mother's heart, filled with love for her daughter, she responds with these very thoughtful words. Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs from that fall from the master's table. Consider her response in this highly volatile exchange, how she shows her mother's heart. And when she does this, Jesus responds as I expect he was hoping to, with praise, not condemnation. Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done as you wish. May I have your attention, please? As I mentioned in our children's message this morning, I spoke with some of our children yesterday as I was preparing their message. What I didn't realize is they were actually helping me prepare this message. I spoke with Mary and Julia and Tyler and Carolyn, and they reminded me of the power of positive words, the power of compliments, the power of affirmation, and the power of compassion. Tyler told me that words like, you're a nice person, make you feel good. They all told me that words like, you're good at this, and I love you, make you feel good. And Julia talked about the power of the words to stand up for someone who is being bullied or mistreated, and how good it made her feel to use her words in that way, and how good it made her feel to see somebody else using their words to defend someone. They also shared with me words that defile. They all told me that mean words make people sad. They upset people. Mary said, if the person is already having a bad day, mean words just make it worse. And I asked Carolyn if she could outlaw any words, what would they be? And she said she would outlaw the words, I hate you. Wouldn't that be a law to pass? Would you vote for it? Anybody? Yeah, absolutely. What our children reminded me is that in just a decade of life, because these kids are like 10, 11, 12 years old, or a little bit more, we already know what words unify and what words divide, what words affirm and what words harm. So if we already know this lesson from when we're young, then why is there so much division? Why is social media filled with harmful words? Why are so many political debates among candidates and citizens alike so injurious and destructive? Why are our homes fractious and our workplaces spiteful? And even if our homes aren't fractious and our workplaces aren't spiteful, why do words come out of our mouths that harm? Why do words ever come out of our mouths that defile us as they harm others? I'd like to focus on just this aspect of Jesus's message this morning. Because Jesus said that our words reflect our hearts. But I thought about that and I thought, these days, is that really true? I believe that much more than what comes out of our mouths is from our brokenness and from our anxiety. I mean, what do you think? I think it reflects our brokenness and our anxiety. We speak before we think. Our anger grabs our words and voices them. A critical word hits a broken place in us and it produces pain and it causes us to lash out. What comes out of our mouths, though, it defiles us, it taints us, it tarnishes us, and it dishonors us. To defile is to be disrespectful to ourselves and to the one that we're speaking to. When I'm the one voicing harmful words, it makes me feel unwell. And not just for a moment. Imagine how much good goes undone when we feel unwell from harmful words we've spoken. When I'm on the receiving end of judgmental or accusatory angry words, I expend a lot of energy sifting through these words to discern whether or not this truly reflects the person's heart. And often I come to the conclusion that their words do not, that the person has a good heart, a loving heart, but that they're stressed or they're disappointed or they're anxious. Sometimes they're even angry at somebody else. And this understanding gives me empathy and a place from which to have a conversation. But I gotta admit to you, it is exhausting. And like Mary said, if I'm already having a hard day, this can knock the wheels right out from under me and I'm struggling for the rest of the day because I too have my own brokenness, my own sensitivities, my own anxieties. See, the problem with words that defile us is that they don't just defile us when we let them loose. They also harm. And they harm the recipient. And they also harm anyone who overheard our words. We sang Charles Wesley's famous song at the beginning of our service this morning. Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing my great Redeemer's praise. If you had 1,000 words, would they all be singing praise? If you had 1,000 tongues, would they all be singing praise? How many of them would be bringing harm? I mean, maybe it's not intentional, but as several of the children pointed out, a lot can happen when we're angry. The words that we use to speak our anger or our indignation or our righteous response or our anxiety are often words that we regret. That's why I chose the prayerful reflection that we have today. Be careful of the words you say. Keep them short and sweet. You never know from day to day which ones you'll have to eat. Here's what I know. There are a whole lot of good hearts worshiping this morning. But somewhere through the day or somewhere through the week or somewhere along the way, words have sprung from our mouths that have failed to reflect our hearts. Words that come from our brokenness, words that come from our anxiety, words that come from our insecurity about the present state of the world. So what are we going to do about that? How are we to show the world our hearts through our words? How do we show Christ's heart using our words? And truthfully, where our hearts are harboring evil intentions or murder or adultery or fornication or theft or false witness or slander, What are we doing to cleanse ourselves of those? Jesus said, listen and understand. It's not what's going into your mouth that's defiling you. It's what's coming out that defiles you. As I was preparing for this message this morning, I came across this picture and it caused me to pause. If the words you spoke appeared on your skin, would you still be beautiful? You know, perhaps if Jesus was speaking to us this morning, he would have used those words to get his message across. This week, we're spending time reflecting on one of the most important recurring topics for people of faith. How are we using our words? Words are so useful and plentiful and colorful and artful, but are we careful with them? Do we consider how they reflect our hearts? Do we consider how they reflect our beliefs? Do we consider how they affect the recipient of our words or someone who's overhearing us? You know, our psalmist today talked about the joy of people who live together in unity. And I just wonder what caused him to overflow with such joy. Had he just been at a wedding where new love had been celebrated and family and friends rejoiced? Had he just celebrated the birth of a child? Had he just fallen in love? Had he perhaps witnessed the reconciliation of two friends or two families that had been estranged? You know, whatever the genesis, his joy was in the unity and the harmony he saw. How do your words support unity? And how do they hinder unity? You know, Leslie asked me if I'd offer some strategies to keep in check what comes out of our mouths. So to complete our reflection today, I'll offer one that I think can be the most helpful, and that is slow the flow. Slow the flow. In our fast-paced kinetic world, words are out of our mouth and off our fingertips before we've really considered them. And consequently, they are far more likely to reflect our brokenness and our carelessness than our hearts. We need to give our hearts time to speak. They often don't speak as fast as our mouths can speak. So here are 4 quick ways to slow the flow. You may already know them, but reminders never hurt, especially when there's so much at stake. And the first one is an old tried and true one. It still works today, and that is journal your response before you just blurt it out to someone. If you journal it, you have a chance to go back and look at it from the outside and see where you got hooked. You also have a chance to collect your thoughts so that you can actually have a meaningful conversation with the person. That's one. Here's the second one. Consider having a prescribed line that you can use to slow the flow of the words that you would use to strike back at someone. Words like, thank you for your thoughts. I'll get back to you on that. Someone gives you feedback that's hard to handle. Thank you for your thoughts. I'll get back to you on that. Someone calls you an idiot. Thank you for your thoughts. I'll get back to you on that. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Thank you for your thoughts. I'll get back to you on that. Okay, so it doesn't actually fit every situation, but it's useful. You could use it in every situation just to slow the flow. What can you say to slow the flow? Third, in a world where the words of our mouths are often electronic, can I please ask you to hesitate before you press the send button on an email or a text? Someone got your goat and your fingers are clickety-clacking over a keyboard and bam, you hit send. Oh, the regret that you can't take back. Instead, leave the email in a draft folder. Come back to it after lunch or tomorrow morning. You can do the same with the text. See if it's still worth sending, or if maybe a conversation is in order now that you have collected your thoughts. And finally, make this your prayer. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing to you, O my rock and my redeemer. I wish you every blessing on the journey. Amen.